Um, for those, I'm Sixto Wagon, project director for the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund. For those for whom a visual description would be helpful, I present as a middle-aged man of Filipino descent with short salt and pepper hair and a graying beard. I am wearing a purple and white plaid shirt with a purple scarf with gold embroidery. In my background, I have a quilted blue and white hanging and a painting of a flower of an orange background by local artist and Accountability and Advisory Council member Julie DeVries. The BIPOC Arts Network and Fund understands the privilege of sharing stewardship with the Karankawa, the Tapilam, Koiwidakan, Sana, and Sakapa Ishak people. We live and create community on their unceded land, and we acknowledge and honor the Indigenous people's guardianship of the coastal plains, the bayous, the lakes, and the rivers as sites of ancestral homeland. Everything built here originates from their presence and their knowledge. With this understanding, our future will derive. Thank you for being with us, and we are excited to share with you about the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund 2023 Artist Awards. Before I continue, I'd like our community consultants and our BANF administrators to introduce themselves to you. So, Torrina?
I'm Torrina Harris. I am one of the consultants for BIPOC Art Network and Fund. For those who a description would be helpful, I am present as a young Black female, red lipstick, Black shirt with polka dots, and a couple of African American art small pieces in my background.
Thank you, Torrina. Anthony?
Hello, my name is Anthony Almendarez. I'm a community consultant as well for the BIPOC Arts Network and Funds. For those of you who need a visual description, I'm wearing a burgundy long sleeve shirt with 3 buttons, and my background is a virtual background of the Northern Lights.
Hank?
Hi there, everyone. My name is Hank Hancock. I'm the coordinator and support person here. I'll be checking the Q&A during the session and otherwise helping and supporting Sixto, Torrina, and Anthony for a physical description. I'm a middle-aged white man wearing a check flannel shirt, and I'm sitting in my office.
Thanks, everyone. So during the session, we're going to go a bit more in depth about the 2023 Artist Award application, the different components of the application, and sharing some thoughts and guiding questions, as well as some background about the reasons for each one of those sections. We will talk about a little bit more about the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund and the community design and leadership. Some of this information is a repeat of the information that we had presented in our January 10th information session. That session gave much more of a background of the work that we're doing. And in this session, we'll actually be going much more in depth about the application itself, and we'll walk you through that aspect. And I think we will put you, like, you can just find information around about that January 10th application. The info session is actually on our YouTube page. So let's see. So the BIPOC Network and Fund is a multi-year initiative dedicated to providing the resources that support the vibrant BIPOC arts network and community of Houston in greatly and fully displaying their power, values, and traditions. This groundbreaking effort was born of the Ford Foundation's America's Cultural Treasures Initiative, which in September of 2020 committed an unprecedented $276 million to support BIPOC arts communities across the country in response to the devastating economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic, and to catalyze a conversation around how BIPOC arts organizations and communities have been historically overlooked and under-resourced. The Regional Grant Making Initiative invested over $35 million across 7 regions, including the Greater Houston, and invited philanthropic partners to match funding in support of multi-year grant programs for cultural groups of color with exceptional regional or local significance. In Houston, the Houston Endowment and the Ford Foundation led the way for the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund creation, equally donating $5 million, with additional generous contributions from the Kinder Foundation, the Powell Foundation, the Brown Foundation Incorporated, and the Cullen Foundation. Unlike other regional initiatives in the America's Cultural Treasures, the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund also known as BANF, is structured as a collaborative, multi-phase fund and a resource network that's guided by funders, artists, and nonprofit leaders in the region. Acknowledging the historical underinvestment in Houston BIPOC cultures and arts communities, this initiative aims to increase support through collective grant making and facilitate new connections between funders and prospective grantees through shared decision-making authority. The strategies BANF develops to invest these resources are guided by the community itself. We are leaders who are artists, directors of arts organizations, foundation program officers, community activists. We build conversations from diverse sectors across our community so that we can build a network of support and care that lasts beyond this 5-year initiative. Fully investing in a thriving BIPOC arts ecosystem in the greater Houston area means that we need to invest in our artists. Through this award opportunity, we're investing $1 million over 3 years to create transformative opportunities for artists whose artistic practice demonstrates a historic service and support for and with greater Houston's BIPOC communities. In an effort to make sure that those who are most affected are designing these programs, we engage grantees and community members to guide the process. Torrina, can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So about the community design group, BIPOC Art Network and Fund brought together leaders from our first round of grantees who invited community partners to help design guides, criteria, and processes. And here you can see our operational partners. So responding to what we've heard before, and in the past year, we built a process more responsive to Latinx and Black communities. This process was designed to recognize that there are specific needs, histories, and aesthetics within these communities that call for Black and Latinx reviewers to understand the nuance and the context of these histories. BANF has engaged a number of individuals, artists, organizers, and curators to lead the review process and support applicants through this process. Further, we encourage our community to nominate reviewers so that we can increase abilities for those who are reading the application to have a shared lived experience, history, or knowledge. And so we'll be accepting nominations for community reviewers through January 17th. And I think we'll share the link to nominating reviewers. And so another part of this application is the community learning and awardee expectations. And so artists who are awarded in this process will commit to actively participating in an 18-month learning community to share experience, opportunity, and inspiration with other BIPOC Arts Network and Fund awardees. We're planning 9 gatherings in that period of time for the awardees to connect, share, and learn with each other through the BIPOC Art Network and Fund. BANF will work with the awardees to determine the shared ways of working and collective goals. While we do not determine the specific outcomes for their time spent together, we do believe that through relationships built in the learning community, these artists will strengthen their active capabilities, open up the new potential for collaborations and ways of thinking and working. And as arts leaders, they will share their knowledge and experiences with the city, the region, and beyond. This would be a think tank, an active reading group. Some of this we won't know until the awardees are determined and we read what's shared in their application. And so I think that's where the application guide and the submittable work, you'll be able to find that in the chat. I think this is awesome. And I'll pass over to Victor.
Thank you, Torrina. I think one of the things that we just want to remind of, like the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund, as a short-term initiative, we are investing heavily in our listening and learning and our consistent learning in this process. It is part of that learning community, and we are like activating as a learning organization. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, we're going to now go into each section of the application and review the application itself, and hopefully we'll be able to then ask, please put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and then we'll be able to address that at the end today of this workshop or whatever this is. So sorry about that. So an overview, the BANF made an early commitment to understand that we are here to uplift and celebrate stories of our community. Too often, artists and organizations of color have not recognized or understood their own power. And we began this moment an initiative of crisis, but we want to celebrate success and thriving. The consistent crises of mentality and emergency-only mentality has taken a toll on our ability to division and act expansively and collectively. We are hoping to build community that values support, care, and shared success. We hope to uplift stories that describe not only the struggle, but also the joy, power, expertise in our communities that is rarely recognized outside of a small circle of our friends or our family or our community. We hope that the applications that who go through this process consider their careers, their whole careers, their work, and seeing their successes as part of a longer-term process and vision. This is not a project grant. This is not an award. This is about your longer-term work. We hope that you build this application as a way in order to tell the story of your work and how it has positively impacted the Greater Houston's community of color. Also recognize that in the application that most questions you can provide a written response or a video response. We will accept Spanish language responses. And if there's other language responses that you would like to present and that would make it easier, please check in with us at the info@houstonbanf.org in order to make sure that we have the support systems in order to do that translation and that support. But we will try to do our best in order to be able to make that possible. I'm going to turn this over to Anthony in order to talk about our artist description. Yes, and work samples.
So artist descriptions and work samples. So we put these sections together so that the story or narrative that you tell in the description of your creative practice connects with the work samples and vice versa. So we're going to be looking at the description of your current artistic practice and your work samples together. So it's going to be sections where you describe your current artistic practice and investigations. You can provide work samples of 10 images. Those acceptable file types can include PDFs, GIFs, JPEGs, PNGs, etc. If you're a writer, we ask for 5 to 7 pages of written material, and that can be submitted as a CSV, a docx, a PDF, RTF, TXT. Or if you're a visual artist or a time-based artist, you can also submit 5 minutes of an audio or video recording. Acceptable file types include AAC, AIFF, FLAC, M4, MP3, MOV, MP4, etc. We want to actually make sure that the work samples are connecting to the description of the artistic practice, and we want to make sure that the work samples also show the skill and understanding that is described in the artistic practice statements. We're also going to go into more detail about work samples, giving tips and better practices and ideas to think about at the work samples visual information, which takes place on January 22nd, I believe at 2:30 to 3:30 p.m.
So the next section of the application will go into narrative. So in this section, we're asking you to share your story and your truth. We don't have any expectations about the answers. They don't have to be perfect, but they should resonate. We're not expecting perfect grammar, poetic statements, or the latest language. We just want it to authentically and accurately reflect the work that you do. Be sure to be mindful of the word count limits and the character limits, as the reviewers won't be reviewing beyond whatever that set limit is. So if your response is 300 words on a 250 word response, goal is 250. If it's 120 seconds in response to a 90-second limit, they'll only be reviewing that first 90 seconds. And so in these sections, questions like what does it mean to you to be a part of a BIPOC community of color? We'll want to know, or good questions to ask yourself is, what does it mean specifically to you? And not necessarily what it means in general to be part of a BIPOC community. It's our hope that this question serves as an opportunity for you to speak to your personal experience and what it means to be a part of the work community or within communities of color. How is it significant? How does it show up? In what ways does it give meaning to your service or your art that you create to that community? Other things to ask yourself while answering these when you're looking at your artistic practice could be, what does it look like? Why is it important to you? What makes it different? We'll be getting a lot of responses from artists who will say, oh, because their art reflects their Blackness or their Latin background, their Filipino culture, that is the service. The answer is the same as or similar as 30 other responses. It'd be impossible for our reviewers to really say what makes one applicant different than the other, what makes one stand out for the other. So we just want to make sure that your story resonates and your responses resonate with your truth, along with your statements of support. We'll be able to utilize to better understand your work. And so other things that are good to ask yourself when responding to these questions are, what are you able to share that sheds light on the ways that your art or your creative practice has been of benefit to communities of color, naming and showing the communities that you work in, what are the other social groups or organizations, formal or informal collaborations, other historically marginalized people or groups you've supported, served, or worked with, etc. And I'll pass it back to Anthony.
Thanks. So I'm going to go into the learning community questions. In this section, we want to build a learning community. So we need to know what's interesting to you, what questions you ask of others and yourself, and what you have to share. So again, in this section, please bring your truths. We will use these answers to inform how we bring that learning community together. It's another place where we as the BIPOC Arts Network get to learn from the applicants what's important to each of you, and we take some of the themes and trends to inform our plans moving forward. So we encourage you to think creatively and honestly about the questions. You're more than just what your resume depicts or your job asks of you, so this is an opportunity to share some of those thoughts. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Torrina for the support statements.
So for your support statements, I will be hosting an information session that will go more into this late January. But basically what this section is asking is for you to identify 2 advocates, collaborators, or super fans, and to ask them to, and we'll need you to help them help you. So these individuals can be collaborators, they can be partners, mentors, community members, or anyone who can speak to your artistic creative productions, your service to communities, the youth and communities of color, and or your ability to be a part of or contribute to a learning community. Often we're used to seeing more value given to statements from people holding more power within their positions, like directors, founders, executives, etc. And sometimes this can lead to people struggling to find someone who is like, oh, is this a good person for me to ask? Or what does it say about my application if this is the person that I ask? And we don't want that to be the case. Regardless of if somebody is considered like an expert in their field, what gives us the best understanding of your work is someone who can speak expert knowledge of your contributions to your community through your work. And because community is such a leading value in this, there's a good chance that there might be people applying who have past or present relationships, collaborators, or with artists working directly with BANF. And for some of the individuals, like community readers, it's okay for if an artist asks that person to write them a support letter. But for other groups like folks who are operational partners or community consultants, those are not people who would be able to write statements. And by kind of having that distinction, that actually for the big to make sure people to write on to have experience and really good things to take into consideration are statements, who can tell what matters to them and community. And this isn't about sharing. And there are 2 for your support, and you can upload directly. The other provides that individual. You'll just want to make sure that there is so if you're uploading, will be that if you information. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, Torrina, I'm sorry. Like your sound is breaking up a little bit, so I'm just going to try to. So we're trying to have some difficulties around some of the sounds. So I think that maybe if we can go back a little bit about what should be in that statement, and then try to do maybe if you talk a little maybe if you talk slower, it might work through. Otherwise, we'll try to figure out something.
Something about that. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that it's still we're still having some difficulties in terms of it breaking up in this aspect. So I think Anthony.
Yeah, I can fill in for Torrina.
Thank you.
So what should be in the statement? It's who can tell your work, who can tell why your work mattered to them, the community, how to describe it that's exciting and true to your work. And this is not about selling, but sharing. So there's two options for how you can submit a support statement. One option being to upload it directly. The other is for you to provide the contact information of the individual that you're requesting a support statement from. So in order for an application to be considered complete, you do need 2 statements completed and submitted by the deadline. And if you're uploading the statement, the deadline is the same as the application deadline, which is February 17th. If you're submitting the contact information for the individuals to provide your support statements, the deadline for them to submit those statements is February 27th.
So we're trying to be mindful of how everybody works, and I think some of the things that you need to think about is if you're able to get your support statements together beforehand, that'll be great in order to make sure that you can submit it all together, so you know that it's made so that it all can be submitted and you're in control over that aspect. I think that's one of the opportunities there. We also know that people are working until the last minute, and that also people are really busy, particularly those that your friends who are going to be writing your support statements. So giving them, like utilizing the email or utilizing that opportunity gives them a little bit more time in order to turn it in. We're trying to be mindful of those options and give those opportunities, while also still recognizing that we have to do the reading and the review, and want to make sure that information is all together in order to be able to move forward and do that thoughtfully, and make sure that all that information is together in this. Great. Anthony, I think it goes back to you for the artist bio and CV.
Yes. So for artist bios and CV, for some of you, this is an easy section where you can quite literally just copy and paste or upload something that you already have. If you have time and opportunity, we'd like you to reread your bio or your CV and make sure that what you're sharing with us speaks about the story that you've built within this application, and that it expands on it. We're also going to have a virtual information session specifically on the bios, on the CVs and resumes on Thursday, January 26th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. So if you need some help with that, please make sure to attend that. Again, this is one of those sections, one of the only sections that requires a written response, and too many opportunities actually require written artist bios. So we hope that you can use something that you've already written. But in case you haven't, please consider writing a bio on CV, because it's definitely going to prove useful for you in the future. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sixto for Submittable Portal.
So I think that hopefully that gives each of you all as applicants opportunity in order to think through all the sections, and it gives us a little, gives you a little insight from our perspective about what we're thinking and some guiding questions around that aspect. We believe that our artists, our arts and arts leaders actually help with all of this and create the guidelines and the application. And we hope that it is not an overwhelming application, but also that it is an opportunity in order for you all to share what it is that you are doing and why it's significant. it is important for us as reviewers, as the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund, to understand what is the story that's actually happening out there. We recognize that there's only going to be 25 awardees this round, and we're investing a lot in them, but also all of the stories that you all are submitting are an opportunity for us to be able to speak back to our funders, to our peers, our collaborators. What are some of the exciting things that are happening that are not just beyond in those 25? I'm also just going to talk a little bit about our Submittable Portal. We are utilizing an online portal for the application process, and hopefully it is not too hard for you all to be able to access it. If you go into our support, Houston support.houstonbanf.org, that's where we have our FAQs. We actually have a little section there, and it talks about how you actually start your Submittable Portal and all of that, and how you do that. What I'm going to show you here is once you actually have your submittable application, or at least your registration, this is what you're going to need to be looking at for where your submissions are. It will be in your saved drafts. So as soon as you do it, like make sure you register and have your saved drafts, so you can see that this is where you can always come back to. This is essentially what our application looks like. Sorry for that speed through. It is on this page. It's HoustonBANFSubmittable.com. Here is the award, a whole lot of like guidelines and more details. And currently it's all there. It might not be there for long because that's a whole lot of information before you get to the application. You'll do eligibility questions, and then if you're eligible, you will get to this aspect. All of this information is the things that we just talked about, and that you can see that there's different opportunities in terms of pasting, uploading, or links in that component. I'm just going to go back to, I think, one of the two most important buttons on this page, which will be the Save Draft and Submit. I encourage you all to utilize the Save Draft often in order to make sure that you don't lose any of your work. And then when you submit, you've completed and you've told your story, and we look forward to being able to read that aspect. We read what you've shared with us. For the, okay, there we go. Sorry. Talking about the review process. Once you hit submit, it's now all in our hands in order to be able to do the review. We have a multi-step review process, which includes an eligibility review, which is all the BANF administration, making sure that you are 21 years old, that you have lived in that you do live in the 9-county region, and that you have been living here for the past 2 years, in order to make sure that the live and the work is actually here for the for the artists who have been doing the work here and have been supporting our communities. There will then be a panel reviews in which our readers, our community readers, community nominated readers, our steering committee, our accountability advisory council will be reading the applications and looking through your work samples, and then doing the scoring in relationship to the criteria, which I'll talk about in a second. We'll then do a finalist review in order to make sure that from our community review panelists, as well as our general panel, we will be able to nominate our finalists and our awardees in order to make sure that it will demonstrate the diversity of our community here in Houston. And then we will also go into the next step in terms of verification, approvals, and acceptances in order to make sure that the people who were nominated as awardees actually want to accept the money and the award and can at this time. So we'll be going through that. In terms of the criteria, those who identify as a member of the BIPOC communities get receive particular consideration. That your work should be recognized not only just by you and your family, but also by your neighbors, the region, local or national organizations, leaders, or artistic professionals. That you have a demonstrated history of service and support for communities of colors and with communities of color in Houston. And that you have a demonstrated history and commitment to artistic activity and production, so that this is not just something that you've picked up, but really have been doing this work for a bit. Artists who have demonstrated a commitment to learning, offering expertise, and engaging with others in a productive and active manner. As we said before, this learning community is a significant component of the award, and that we hope that those who are awarded will be able to engage with each other and with us, so that we are able to learn with them, and that the community can actually benefit from their knowledge, their expertise, and their thinking in broader, in other ways. So, okay, I'm going to now pause the share. In our guidelines, we actually have named for you some suggested steps. And one of the first steps is actually contact your advocates. Make sure that they are, that you, the people who are your friends or and you're going to do your support awards are on board, that they understand the timeline and the deadlines, and that they understand what you're asking for them. Make sure that they have the correct email address and that all this information is available to you. We encourage you to gather your documents, utilize like register and submittable, but then also you have the worksheet, you know, have all this information, and do much of your work offline and when it's comfortable for you, and then utilize the Submittable Portal when it makes sense for you. Plan, do this work, and we encourage you to check to make sure that all of your links and your audio recordings are valid and that all of those things are ready, because it'll be important for us to make sure that you have submitted all the information and it all kind of works. Save your work. Please don't forget to save your work in that aspect. And that also at a certain point, make sure that you let your advocates know when you have sent them a request from Submittable. Be in communication with them. Again, one of the things when we talk about these support statements is that you are part of a community and they are part of a community that support you. It is an opportunity in order to have the conversations and have the opportunities to connect everybody, so that that we ask for help and we deserve the help, and we have people who are really excited and willing to share the impacts of your work with other people. And so that's one of the things that we hope in this aspect. It is now time for questions and answers. So if you all would like to put any questions in the Q&A or in the chat, please just and then we'll be able to answer, hopefully, your questions. We also encourage you to, what we will continue to be doing is that there is a newsletter that will go out to anybody who is interested in, that will give you a weekly update as to what information sessions are available, what events are available, and what updates we have put up into the FAQ. So please sign up into that, and I'll put that up in the chat in a bit. Check our YouTube page, check out our web page in order for those types of updates. The support.houstonbanf.org is a place where we will post all of the, as many of the questions and many of the answers to those questions as possible. We'll also be doing excerpts of these information sessions, and we'll be posting it in the FAQs so that it becomes a resource guide for you. We are trying to do these information sessions in bits so that it is a little bit more accessible, and that we know that there's a lot to do and there's a lot of opportunities, and these different information sessions are an opportunity in order to go a little bit more in depth in that work. So yes, there are two, in terms of the questions that we have from Perry, thank you. There are two, you have two that you need to submit to. And that is what the limitations are. And we are asking for two because we hope that you are can ask the support, and you can think about collaborators and communities. And I think that one of the things that Torrina was saying, and hopefully I'm not sure if that you all heard, was think through who are the people who are the best people who can be your advocates, your super fans, and in that work. So Teresa, I'm seeing that your work involves helping women heal emotionally and spiritually, and centers around using creative arts as a form of self-care. I think, Teresa, if you believe that that is service that supports our communities of color here in Houston, and that is, it is your opportunity in order to make the case for that in this application. I think that, again, we are being pretty broad in the relationship to who, what defines as an artist and who defines as an artist in that aspect. But we also want to make sure that there is consistency in terms of creative practice and consistency of work, and that there are opportunities for that are not just around a specific service, but there's definitely a creative like opportunity and creative engagement in that. So yes, and you get to utilize the application process as an opportunity in order to make that case. Okay, I think that we're getting some. Yes, is this support only for BIPOC artists that have direct community engagement activities versus solely traditional studio practice? I think that people who have studio practice are welcome to apply. We just need to also know, like, their studio practice needs to also, like, their work, their creative practice, their life does need to have service demonstrated to our communities of color. We have a number of artists, and we have a number of examples of artists who have a studio practice, who do make specific objects, but also do work and have service in the community. It is part of our request to you is to be able to share how those things go together and how that they are symbiotic and connect to each other. But this is not just an artist award. This is actually about focusing on our opportunities to build a stronger and a thriving BIPOC arts ecosystem. And that's part of the work of the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund. It is not just simply about artistic practice and artistic production, but really building an ecosystem that supports the artists, the community members, and our arts organizations. So that is part of what it is. Anthony or Torrina, are there other questions that are coming up that you would like to answer, or anything that you like, in terms of the work that we've been discussing? Is there anything that you wanted to echo or reiterate? In terms of like the I think that, like, Anthony, in terms of the finding an advocate and an artist, I think that Anthony covered some of that information and recovered some of that information, and we'll also just add some of that into our FAQs. But I also think that in terms of the oh, actually, there is. I think, Torrina, like, you want to try again in order to talk a bit about who you should be, like the different types of people, and I think that there's parts of it I'm not sure that everybody heard around how people can think about leaders and who they can ask.
Yeah, my sound coming through? Okay, good. I think a lot of with like opportunities like this, people kind of default thinking and the thinking that we're used to, trying to find someone maybe is like well established in the, and somebody who's kind of more of like a figure, like those positions, and it's not necessarily what we're gauged as applicants or submissions off of, and so we want people to kind of expand beyond for kind of expert in the field, especially that not everyone has proximity to those experts and things like that, to really commit to who is someone who can speak knowledge on the work that you do, the contribution make to the community you serve. Might even be somebody who directly from your work, if you work with students or with other community groups, collaborations, coalitions, that just somebody speaks very clearly and just really a picture of the importance.
Trina, I think
you can have time. Okay.
Your sound's cutting out again, so I'm sorry about that. So I'm like, no, like it's technology, and we're still in Mercury retrograde, so it all kind of makes sense. I think that one of the things that, like, if you don't mind, I'm just going to uplift or just bespeak some of the things that I heard in or I think that you were saying, is that the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund is not about just expertise as identified by an institution. The expertise comes from the community members, comes from the people who know your work. It can look like a community member, like, a community leader. It can look like the people who are like people who are under recognized, but really are advocates in the community who understand how these things, like, how it happens. And it is actually part of our excitement that you all get to name who you think are experts in our community, who you think are experts in your community who understand your work and who can speak about that work. So we encourage you to not think only about the people who are executive directors of arts organizations or people who have titles around their names. In fact, I would encourage you, if their face is on our website in terms of part of our leadership team, you should not ask them, because they should not be writing you a letter of support, because that would be a conflict of interest. But really think broadly, think about the people who can really make your statement, and it might actually be a really great conversation that you have with these people about really what is the work and what is it you're trying to do in that component. I think that so sorry, Torrina, and I hope that I don't want to take that away from you, but I feel that might, hopefully that covers some of the conversation that you're talking about. Teresa, I see that you have a question. This is opportunities for creatives. It can be as producing artists, as curators. So you, as artists, define your work, but it is not just around artists who create create objects, but also your involvement and your engagement with community and your in service with Houston. We are looking, in order to build a stronger Houston, that lives into its diversity, that lives into the opportunities, in order to create a thriving BIPOC ecosystem, and actually support our artists and our communities in that manner. That will show up in a lot of different ways, and we hope that the awardees that we will name will be showing what that service looks like in different ways, and that they will be makers. They will be people who've shown in lots of places, as well as people who have only shown, who might not have shown publicly in a lot of, I think that we're looking for a diversity of practice, and we're looking for a diversity of service, but really we're looking for the stories who actually can be inspiring to other people who are doing this work, as well as people who are doing things that we can learn from, as from each other, and from, as the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund have the opportunity to learn and uplift some of those stories. So I wish that we are trying to be we're being very careful in saying that this is it should not look, and it is not we're open to a lot of answers, but we're also not sure what some of those answers are going to be until you all start submitting what those applications look like. So hopefully that answers your question, Teresa. Are there any other questions that are coming in? Okay, we have, just as again, another technical aspect, we will, if you go to our website, we will, you can see that there is the registration for the work sample session. There's registration for the CV and bio section. There is a Spanish language information session that's happening tomorrow, as well as an artist cram, Spanish Latino town hall artist cram that's actually happening in February. We will be creating opportunities for a support desk for short reservations to have one-on-one conversations with some of our community consultants. That will happen closer to February. And so we're trying to find different ways in order to be able to support our, y'all, in order to do the best application that you can, and share your story. Again, I want to remind, your application does not have to be perfect. We're not asking for highfalutin language. We're not asking for academic language. We're not asking for the most the trendiest words. We're asking for you to tell your stories and why that's important and why that's significant to us and to the communities in Houston. And we're excited about learning of that aspect. Okay, sorry. So Veronica, we have a question and we'll answer, like, that's a particular question and we're going to answer that via email, but we're going to be very, like, again, what we are looking for to award are artists who have made a commitment to Houston, who live in Houston and our communities, and have made a commitment to service to our communities of color here in Houston, and that is an ongoing priority of our work. And yes, and really, it is about the 9-county region and the work that's happening here in the 9-county region. And I will say that, like, yeah, so we're going to leave it at that, and you can email us and then we'll answer that, like, more, and then there will be more specific, like, individual questions will be answered via email or do a support desk ticket in that. Any other questions or any things that, like, Anthony, Torrina, that you would like to add into this mix?
I think you covered most of it. Deborah had a question. Is it safe to say grassroots artists are the target?
We have multiple targets. Grassroots artists and artists who have connections to our communities is a significant component of this work. That does not necessarily mean that they have to be grassroots. That does not need to, like, I think that shows up into a lot of places. I think that that's, it is that connectivity, it is that service, it is the ability in order to articulate that, and it is the ability in order to work with others that we are really, that are part of what we are engaging in the criteria. So I think that when we say grassroots, that has a lot of different ideas and a lot of different definitions, and we don't want to be, and we want to be careful around what that work is. And I think that I also want to be clear that a part of our work as the reviewers and the community consultants is that we have different community consultants from different perspectives in order to encourage us to think differently, to think, to relearn, and for us to be able to hear and see our community as it is actually here in Houston, and not just what we assume it to be, and have preconceived notions around that. Okay. If you actually, the links for all of the chat, please go to our, again, if you can't copy the aspect, go to our support desk, and all of the links of some of this will be there. Go to our website for the links for the registration aspect. And also, if you go into, I don't know if this is actually, like, still streaming into our YouTube live, or if it is great. And but we will be posting into YouTube, and so some of that information will be able to post in there. We hope that aspect. Thank you all for your time here. Thank you for attending, and we appreciate your engagement with this work. We look forward to hearing your stories. I think one of the things that that we heard in that, or that Tony talked about in this in the January 10th information session is, like, we encourage you to apply, and we encourage you to tell other people to apply. We encourage you to do this work, and we are interested in hearing all the stories, and we hope that this is an opportunity that that is shared, and that we recognize that it is competitive because there are only 25 awards that will be deemed this round, but it is also a learning opportunity for us in order so that we can do the questions that you're going to put into the learning community are really important for us to understand what you all are thinking. The ways that you show up service, the way that you also, who are you identifying as community leaders, are things that we're all going to be looking at and looking and expanding upon, so that hopefully we continue to grow the ideas and information throughout the multiple years of the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund, and that in the course of our time, we will continue to build a community of care and a network of support that strengthens the opportunity and our artists and our arts organizations and our communities of color here in Houston. I'm grateful for your time. Again, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Torrina. Thank you, Hank. Thank you all for attending. And we appreciate this, and we look forward to your application. Take care, everyone. Oh, it is. I'm now going to stop the recording.